right, man. Zachary Friedley, one of the most multi-dimensional human beings I've ever known, for sure. I'm just stoked that you've got half a minute to spend a little time with us and give us a little like recap. I mean, been longtime friends of the Go Sleeves Network. We love supporting Born to Adapt, and both being there physically and also with the financial support coming from our customers. And yeah, man, I thought it would just be fun to update everybody on what's been up in Zach's world and the build on UTMB. And so, but let's just start with like high level mission. Zachary, what is it about? What is UTMB about for you, and in the bigger picture and the mission for people who haven't heard the story yet, and then we'll dig into UTMB.
Yeah, so I mean, I love trail running and I run trails as a profession, but also building the adaptive community in trail running, which kind of doesn't really exist right now. There might be like standalone events here and there that have something, but as a whole, it's not really mainstream. So we, started Born to Adapt 2 years ago now, and we've hosted two successful events that was focused on having adaptive athletes in the events, and we're scaling those events. We're actually working on an event in February of 2024 that's going to be in New Zealand, basically Born to Adapt New Zealand. So that's the next big project that I'm working towards as far as Born to Adapt goes. And then, I don't know, since last time we talked, I've done many UTMB events all over the world and just got back from probably my biggest race in my career a couple weeks ago.
Perfect. Awesome. And let's talk about it. So maybe we'll just start at a high level summary of UTMB, and then we can kind of go back and dig into the details. And like setting the stage. I mean,
Yeah.
this is year two for you, and for people who don't know,
Yeah.
they're pretty hardcore about your segment cutoff times. And last year obviously it didn't quite work out. You missed the first segment cutoff time. They cut your bib, swept you off the course, and you know pretty bitter. Set the stage for this year to make the
Yep.
comeback. And from what I've read so far, it sounds like you crushed the first segment, got to the cutoff way ahead of time. We're killing it. Things are good, and then it kind of got tough and dicey. So yeah,
Yeah.
take us from there, man.
So for people that don't know, UTMB stands for Ultra Trail Mont Blanc. It's a race that takes place in France. It's a week-long event. There's like 10 different events, all the way down to like a kids run, all the way up to a 330K mountaineering adventure. The big event is the UTMB, which is about 100 and something miles, 106 miles around Mont Blanc. All the brands, everybody comes from all over the world to run in this event. You have to qualify for this event. It's a pretty big deal inside the running community. And last year was my first time in one of their events called UTMB MCC, which is about a 40K with 3,000 meters, essentially almost 10,000 feet of vert. They call it a fun run. However, in this year's event, for a fun run, there was world champions in it. I mean, it's kind of contradictory there at the beginning, say, oh, it's a fun run, but yet you have like world champions in this event racing. So it is competitive. It's super challenging. For me, missing my leg above the knee, pretty much on paper, it looks impossible for someone like me to hop in this race and be successful. Last year's event, I didn't make the first cutoff. I was late by like 30 minutes or something like that. And my day ended short. And like right after that event, I kind of had the thought of like, man, like I don't know about this. And woke up the next day and was like, all right, I want to do it again. And started to change different things about my life. Some different changes I made. I got at that time I had just gotten a new prosthetic, completely different than anything I'd ever worn in my life before. A lot of people didn't know that I was only like 6 weeks into this thing, which is very challenging for somebody running something high level like that to switch out something as crucial as a prosthetic. The only thing I can compare it to is it's like if you're maybe racing NASCAR, then all of a sudden you're racing F1. Like you're still racing, but you're in a completely different kind of machine. So that was what I was dealing with. So I got to dial in the last year that prosthetic even more. We built another version of this leg in May of this year, which was phenomenal. It's the best piece of equipment that I've ever ran in my life. And then right after UTMB last year, I changed coaches and went and started training with Eric Orden, who's really famous for the book Born to Run. And he's more dedicated to mountain athletes, which suits my need. So him and I started working together and started aiming towards UTMB 2023, probably around November of 22 last year. And we had a build up to UTMB Tarawera, New Zealand, 21K with a little bit of vert, a couple thousand feet, and I crushed it. It was the best race I ever had. And then we had another build up to a race in Spain called UTMB Valderan, which is a European major, and they say one of the toughest courses in the UTMB circuit. And I did their sky race, which is basically up and over a mountain, and crushed that one. I beat the cutoff by like 40 minutes. Not really full sending, just kind of using it as a training run and still being successful in a mountain environment, in a UTMB environment, which is super competitive. So that was what started off my, I call it my like European race series. It was early July. Then I went over to Zurich with On and worked in their labs. That's my major sponsor, and we are innovating different products for my needs. And we had a couple different prototypes of tread for my blade that I got to use while I was living in Chamonix for the summer training for UTMB MCC. And it was amazing to wake up every day. I lived in the valley in a town called Argentieri, which is like a 10-minute bus ride from Chamonix. So out my door, I could literally reach any kind of trail you could dream of. I could see glaciers. I ran the glaciers. I ran the UTMB MCC course. I broke it up into segments. We started to have a strategy of what was what, how I was going to run it, and like how I should feel when I arrive at this certain point. Because it's a very different course all the way through. You got climbs, you got descents, you got flats, you got wooded trail, you got rocky mountaineering trail. There's a little bit of everything. So it was really crucial for me to know the course from start to finish. So there was no surprises on race day, which there was a lot of surprises
Yeah,
on race
no
day.
surprises. Nice thought pattern,
Um,
but not
yeah,
reality.
so for what happened on race day for me, it was an actual winter storm, which was unseasonably for that time of year. I saw high winds, rain, precipitation all day from start to finish. Um, Ran in some of the craziest mud I'd ever seen in my life. So there was surprises, and I kind of had to figure it out on the go. And luckily for us, On and I have been working on this prototype tread that is insane grip. And I had one prototype that I did during the training block, went back to Zurich a few days before the race, altered it to make it a little better, but it was supposed to be like a just in case tread if it were to get wet or slippery up in the high altitude, but it actually came out of the kit immediately, like 2Ks in. We put it on, so it hadn't even really been tested. And I think that was pretty much the reason why I was able to be successful in the race is it gripped onto things um, kind of unreal. I mean, the mud was like 6 inches thick in some spots. The rocks were definitely wet the entire day. And then up at top, it was snowing with about 70-mile-an-hour winds. And I pretty much cruised all day long. I didn't really have any problems at all until I wouldn't even call it a problem. I was descending. I got over the big climb, which is at this place called Col des Baumes, and it's basically two massive climbs to get up to this spot. And I was running with my friend and on trail manager David Kilgore. he and I were like the dream team. You know, I'd get into these moments where maybe I didn't think I was moving so good. And David's like, dude, you're like way ahead of schedule. We were at the first cutoff an hour before the actual cutoff, which is super huge improvement considering the conditions that we were in. And then I got to the second cutoff 15 minutes before the cutoff, which is, you know, still pretty good considering it's this massive climb. It just goes up and up and up and up and up and up. And right there, that's where the snow was happening. You couldn't really see. The visibility was crazy. You couldn't really see probably 10 meters in front of your face. Snow was hitting your face, super cold. But up there, I'd been there before. I'd been up there like 5 or 6 times because I literally lived, you know, pretty close to that section. So I'd spent some time up there. So I think if I didn't spend time in that area before, I would have been freaked out in that moment because you're really high up, you're super exposed. It gets nuts up there, and I was really comfortable up there. And someone handed me some like really good soup. I don't know why that's important to the story, but the soup made me feel like amazing. And I remember looking at David and being like, dude, I feel better right now than I did when I started this race. This is phenomenal. And we started to make our descent, but that's when things got a little south with UTMB. And the sweepers came up on me again. And immediately when I left that aid station, they said, hey, you have 10K to go in 2.5 hours. You're not going to make it. You should quit, which is insane to say to somebody, you know. And that's kind of when it started to get dicey with UTMB. And I should rewind to last year's event. Didn't make the cutoff. UTMB reached out to me with this inclusion person who they have hired, and they're going to start doing these like best practices for inclusion. And they had calls with me leading up to this race, so almost for a year, about how they could make it better. And we had many discussions about having a guide runner, having extended cutoff times for people like me that are above the knee, long, maybe having the entire 10 hours to finish the race because I can run super fast on flats and I can charge up hills pretty good, but I just take a little bit of extra time on the descent. So we had all these discussions. They even sent me a slide deck that had all these different changes they want to implement, and they wanted to do it at UTMB 2023 MCC, but they ghosted me about a month before the event. They wouldn't return my emails. They wouldn't return David's emails, On's emails, Buff's emails, my manager's emails. They ghosted me. So they left me hanging with a lot of things that were presented, and I had a lot of follow-up questions on how it was going to be implemented, and they just didn't follow through. So when David and I went to go pick up the bib, it was him and I there. They gave me my bib, and I said, "So this is my guide runner. What is he? How is he going to be identified at these aid stations?" And they said, "No, can't have a guide runner. You're going to be disqualified if you have a guide runner." We're very upset that I even brought up the word guide runner, and all these people were standing in front of me, just like basically like, "How dare you say you could have a runner on course?" So I pulled out an email that I got back in March, showed it to them, and said, "Hey, do you know who this person is?" They said, "Yes." I said, "Read the email." The email says, "Zach Friedley can have a guide runner. We're excited about this, blah, 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 blah." And they're like, "Oh my God, like, yeah, we don't know. I mean, that is definitely from somebody who works here, but we don't have any information about this. Uh,
Unbelievable.
we don't know what to tell you."
Right.
And prior to this, David had been into the office, the UTMB office in Chamonix, and said, "Yo, you know, Zach is invested lots of time and energy into this. This guy's a professional athlete, and you're treating him like he doesn't matter. What is going on?" And they're like, "Oh, we're gonna figure it out." Well, they didn't figure it out. So we're sitting there trying to figure this out. It's the day before the race, one day before this race, and nobody knows what the hell is going on. And this is supposedly a world major trail organization telling me that I need to figure it out. They're like, "Well, we don't know what to tell you." So in that moment, I started pulling out all these papers that they gave me in this bag, and boom, there was a bib that said guide on it. So I turned the bib around and showed it to them, and everybody was like, "Oh, the guide bib, it's in the package." So nobody knew. I had to figure it out on our own. So that was what kind of started it off, and I kind of knew that shit was going to get weird. I knew weeks before this was going to happen. because of their lack of communication. So when this was all going down in the race, it wasn't shocking to me. I think it was shocking to David that this is how they do business and this is how they're going to treat me. So here we are, back on course, descending what for me is the most challenging section of the course. And luckily, David was behind me, and there'd be certain times where I'd stop. These people were so close that they would physically hit David with their bodies. So imagine a guy missing his leg, descending a mountain in a snowstorm. It's already challenging enough. And then I got 8 people behind me breathing down my neck, telling me I'm not going to make it, that I should quit. Then just kept telling me, oh, hour 45, hour 30, hour 20. So that's what we dealt with all the way down. And David was just livid, like almost like, oh my God, I can't believe this is your reality. So then we get down to the bottom, and I still have like 20 minutes to go to the next aid station or whatever. They're still trying to get me to quit. We continue on. I get to the last checkpoint and I was like 20 minutes over. And during that time, the ground team at On, my wife Megan, some other people at the North Face had called the office and said, yo, there's an office there for UTMB. Like Zach is supposed to get the entire 10 hours of this event. It's not happening. What the hell's going on? So there's a lot of shit happening, like in this race that should have already been squared away. So I get to this aid station. Megan tells me, and I have screenshots of it. Another athlete came in right before me, and he was after the cutoff, and they let him continue. No hassle. I come through, and they're trying to cut my bib again. Same shit, that they tried to do last year. But this year, I felt a little bit of an edge about it, and I was ready to like fight some people for my opportunity to finish this thing. And I remember being in this tent, and I thought they were going to scan my bib, and all of a sudden the scissors come out, and I see the scissors, and I just look away, throw my piece of watermelon down, and just bolt out to the trail again. And then everybody's like screaming and yelling, like, yeah, like there's a lot of energy, from my teammates. Me and David were like, we're doing this. We're going to make it to Chamonix. So we get back on the trail, and then that's when we noticed that they were pulling up all the markers. So here I am flying down this trail. It's about dark coming in. I'm mentally fatigued from the day. David's fatigued, and now we have no markings for this damn course, and we're
This is
still
insane.
on the side of a
It's
mountain
nuts.
in the dark, in the
Right.
rain, in the mud. So we navigated ourselves off this mountain. It was crazy. I mean, there in Chamonix, there's trails everywhere. The trails are amazing. So there's so many different ways you can go. So it's not like straightforward where you're on this trail and it's like this is the path you take. There's paths everywhere. So we had to figure out our way off the mountain back into the valley because they pulled the plug on us. And we did. Luckily, I had my watch that had the map loaded up on it. We got into town. I'm sure we got lost a few times, but if you know David Kilgore and myself together, we're just having a blast laughing
Yeah, yeah.
about this. How crazy is it that they did it to the guy in a blade, that they made it like this for him? But basically, F them. We're gonna make it to Chamonix. We're gonna cross the finish line, and that's what we came here to do.
Yeah.
So we did. We finished. We made it to the finish line. There's videos of me finishing, dropping my poles, and my whole on team is there. Other people are there, just screaming and yelling. I saw Allie at the finish line, which is super cool. But it was that community that we brought from On that made this experience possible and made it what it was. So I finished in 11 hours and some change. The race cut off as 10 hours and change. Would I have made it there in 10 hours if the course would have been marked? I don't know, but I mean, I didn't have that opportunity. UTMB also discussed with me in prior emails to give me some extended time to finish because I am an AK runner. Similar to what the Paralympics are, they don't have the standard of Noah Lyle in 100 meter. They have another
Mm-hmm.
standard based upon whether you're below the knee, above the knee, visually impaired. So we were working towards that, and there was a lot of language and things discussed, but they just basically ghosted the entire project. So in that moment, I was basically an unofficial finisher. And to kind of give you a picture of how disorganized they were, couple days later, I get an email from the inclusion person that wanted to invite me into their office to celebrate the successes of this event for me. Um, so
You're like, do you people talk?
yeah, so David and I went into this meeting and basically were like, whoa, what successes are you guys talking about? Like they tried to kick Zach off the course. They were hovering over him all the way down from Col des Baumes. They basically unmarked the course for us, and the woman had no idea. She basically put her hands on her face and was like, "Oh my God, I cannot believe this is what happened to you." But like I said, we had our community there. On showed up, my friends showed up, and we made it what it was. Um,
The finish
it
line
just,
in the videos was like a massive celebration.
yeah,
I felt like half the crowd was still there, but no, it was just your community, which is still
yeah.
almost better.
Um, Totally, and I don't need an
Yeah,
organization to make it official on their website that I completed something.
yeah,
However, on Monday or on Thursday of last week, for whatever reason, I go back to the results just to check my stuff to see what times I went in, and they actually changed my result to an official finisher. So we did something. We took the flag and stuck it in the ground, and it still flies.
right.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it was a wild experience, dude. I knew it was gonna be like that. Um, you throw in the elements of the weather, them removing the course markings. It was just a battle that I was prepared for, and that's what I kept telling myself all the way through was like, I was ready for this. I felt good the entire way. Maybe 2 hours of the whole deal where I was struggling a bit, but that's pretty much normal for a 12-hour day.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I think we moved the needle even more. We put more pressure on UTMB to make something different. And for me personally, I'm going to double down on this with my
Hmm.
sponsor on, and we're going to keep showing up. And we're here, like I think after last year's to this year, how much improvement that I made, I feel like I totally belong in this space. And I'm just ready to keep on showing up.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So we'll come back to like your experience a little bit, but like I don't know, man. I mean, I'm hearing you talk about it, and inside of me, I'm just like, screw these guys. I'm not coming back, right? Like,
Right.
how dare
I
you?
had I had
But I
those
got,
thoughts.
but I'm getting a different sense of this from you, right? Like,
Yeah, it's
how
not.
are you going to approach this?
So here's how so immediately afterwards, the next day, I was like that. Like, why would I want to spend my time with these people that treat me like this when I can go
Right.
anywhere I want in the world and race? But it's bigger than me. This is the stage um, that is like the pinnacle for trail running. So if we're trying to build out elite level trail running for adaptive athletes, someone's got to be this person to push the envelope.
Yeah.
And that's me. I mean, here we are in the thick of it. Luckily, I'm sponsored by a big brand that gets the vision, supports the vision, and puts me in these positions. I'm just the guy taking the punches on the chin, like right now. What I don't want to have happen is somebody that's in our Born to Death community, like our friend Ryan, who runs with cerebral palsy and is getting deeper and deeper into these trail running events. And he's been asking me what events to show up at. I don't want to
Yeah.
send Ryan into UTMB and have him have this experience without the massive support of a brand because it would completely suck to be treated that way. um, I just couldn't imagine having somebody have that experience without the support of a brand. I am like a privileged person. This is not the normal to have this type of support. So I want to be able to change an organization for the people out there like Ryan. And I think this is just part of it, taking the licks in the face. So a couple days removed from it, I was like, all right, this is just what it is, and let's keep on coming. This was
I know
round five.
it's a different mood because like a year ago you were very diplomatic. It's like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, okay, this went down, but I'm just going to work with it. And I think you were a little bit more humble about your experience and your preparedness, and probably in a way, probably had an idea of like, yeah, okay, I can definitely be on, 5 levels up from where I am. You had some challenges, like you said, preparing for it. This year you came in fully prepared, ready to take it on, ready to take it down. And that's like, I mean, your whole mood is just like, no, I ain't
Yeah,
having it. I ain't having it. And I think that's perfect. And you know, the fact that you're willing to kind of circle back in and keep pushing, I mean, that's the point, right? I mean, that's why you're doing this in the first place. It's not really about your experience per se, it's your experience creating the opportunity for those to follow behind. And you're right, like it has to include all that preparation, right? I mean, the fact that you
yeah,
actually had some tread available to you that could allow you to finish the course because of,
yeah.
you know, the generosity of On Running. I mean, that, you know, you're not going to be the only one who needs that support.
Totally, and I mean, it took me living there for many weeks to be able to, complete this thing. So there's tons of support on the back end. And I think that's what I went into this event with expectations because we talked about it for an entire year of what we were going to do differently. As
Yeah.
where the first time I went, we had no communication. I showed up, here I am, here was the experience. Now let's make it better. We went through all that. So we had like these little benchmark things that we were going to try to do. And then to just completely ghost me a month before the event, it was like, no, like this is BS. Like you don't do this. Um, maybe send me an email that says, hey, F off. We're not going to do it this year. But to
Right.
just completely drop the communication when they had all this progress listed out and then be like nowhere to be found is just completely unacceptable. So that's why my attitude's changed, and
Yeah.
I am a professional. I spent tons of time preparing for this, changed my life, made some sacrifices, came there and lived, eat, and breathe this thing. So I wanted to be treated, like a professional, and I was not treated like that by any means.
Yeah. I mean, what's your going to be your approach with that organization, you know, for the next year? How do you think you're going to approach this? It's pretty clear one hand doesn't talk to the other. So I'm not sure how you can solve
Yeah,
that, but
I mean, I think with a big brand like you saw On's um, post about me finishing, like without that, I would have been silenced at UTMB. You would have like it would have been nothing. This
right.
thing wouldn't have occurred. So I think we're gonna double down together, On and I, and keep trudging forward with this thing. Because I think having that huge community, big brands behind us, you're gonna eventually even have to change. I mean, even people at the North Face were involved in this. Keith Byrne, who is the announcer for UTMB. He's aware of all this stuff. So it's starting to catch on, and I don't
Yeah.
think they're going to have an opportunity to ignore it or something. I mean, something ain't gonna fly.
Yeah, you may have armed guards with you in your in your crew next year. I don't even know whatever it's gonna take, but yeah, if they don't get the memo for next year, I don't know what to say about it. It's you're talking about an organization and a brand that's not listening.
But
So
also, I wasn't the only adaptive athlete there. There was a Troy
yeah,
Sachs from Australia who's missing his leg below the knee, ran OCC, finished, and then there was Amy Palmero Winters from I don't know where she's from, but she ran UTMB. She's missing her leg below the knee. She made it in like 100K in before she got cut off.
hmm
So these athletes are starting to show up. So, you know, last year there may have been just me. We don't know. This year for sure four. Maybe next year eight, then 16, and then you're gonna have to do something.
yeah, and I don't know. Something to contemplate is, as you're saying, like you need the preparation, you need the community, you need the equipment, you need all of that. And you know, maybe there's an opportunity there to kind of build that community of, okay, who are going to be the first, you know, five people who want to, you know,
Yeah.
be in this group. Let's prepare together, right? Because you're 2 years in, man, you're starting to become pretty expert at this thing. So I don't know, that might be the opportunity space for next year.
Yeah, I think we can get creative. Me and Troy actually trained together before the event. He came out and stayed at my house for a weekend and then got his own Airbnb in Argentina. And we went out on the trails and did some recon and talked about strategy and had some brainstorming ideas. I mean, he's a BK and I'm an AK, so we run completely different. but
Yeah.
he even gave me some train of thought of like, hey, maybe you need a different system going down on these descents. So right now, me and my prosthetics guy, David Rotter in Chicago, are having this ongoing conversation of what can we do differently.
Hmm.
So we're maybe, changing the way some prosthetic tech is done for something like this.
That's so cool. So, different angle to this. There's the physical and the mental. Sounds like, from what I'm hearing, the physical was like game on, no issues. You felt great, especially at maybe one of the most, toughest parts of it, because the downhill's coming up and that's the most challenging piece. But sounds like the physical component was on point. What about how tough was it mentally compared to other stuff you've been through? Sounds like that was fairly on point too.
Yeah, I mean, everything was pretty much on point. I think I had the most confidence ever in a race. I mean, I'd been on every section of it. Even with the weather, I didn't care. I was like, unless they are going to pull everybody off the course and say it's too dangerous, I was game for whatever the hell was going on. Partially because on one of my training days, we went through the hardest section, which is basically from Treant up to Col des Baumes. It's this crazy section where it is pretty dangerous, actually. And I did it in training, and a storm came in at the top of it, and we couldn't see. It was like hail pellets, and I had that moment of like, oh shit, like what have we gotten ourselves into? And we managed to get out of it, and we joked around, um, like, oh well, at least on the day of the race, if bad weather comes through, you'll be prepared.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it was bad weather, and I was like, well, I know what to expect. Eric, my coach, we went through a lot of different situations, and a lot of people always tell you that they uh, they like visualize themselves going through the race so strong and so ready and like crushing things. We actually visualized it being crazy hard, feeling like shit. What are you going to do in this and this and this? So I already had those visualizations of what I was going to do in those circumstances, and it almost kind of made me laugh in those moments of
Mm,
like, huh, well, been here before.
I already saw
um
this.
so I just knew that I had what it
Yeah.
took physically to make it happen, and we made it happen. So it was like all things firing together. Even my leg had no issues the entire day. Like, even though it was insanely challenging, all the things that needed to happen happened because we were just well prepared. Spending 3 weeks this last time in May with Dave Rotter in Chicago to make sure this leg was what we needed to do. I mean, all that, paid off whenever it was race day. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's part of being a professional, is taking this thing and making it, perfect, like it is like a job.
Yeah. It's interesting. That's definitely what I was going to touch on, is like advice for anyone trying to take on something like this, where there's definitely elements of the unknown that just, they are what they are. They're unknown. But, and how you would prepare for that. And it sounds, from what I'm hearing you say, is like, yeah, we had the vision of killing this thing and doing well. But also it sounds like you prepared for when things go off rails, how are we going to handle it? And
Yeah.
I mean, would that be part of the advice you would be given for someone who's trying to push beyond something they've experienced before, and like how they would prepare based on your experience?
Yeah, so I think one thing too is don't ever take it, even though it was serious, but not, we didn't really take it that serious in the race. Like, there was a lot of laughter between me and David, because whatever shows up is out of your control sometimes. You just got to move through it. And if you start to get tense and like stressed and like all these things, then you're dealing with that as well as the what's like in front of you. So I think that aspect of just kind of being loose in those moments, and knowing that you trained for it, knowing that you worked hard, and knowing that I was going to give whatever I had to give that day, and that's all I can do.
Yeah.
And whatever happened happened. So I think it's a lot have to do with going on up in your mind. And
But
I
you kind
think,
of live that way. I mean, that ain't race skills for Zachary. That's life skills for Zachary, right? I mean, tell me I'm
yeah,
wrong, but this
yeah,
is
I
what you
mean,
prepare for in life.
totally. I do a lot of behind the curtain things that you don't see on my Strava,
Yeah. Yeah.
that aren't really in workouts per se for running. So it's accumulation of all these things that I've worked on together, but I think it can be applied to everything, not just mountain running, you know?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, maybe expand on that a little bit, right? Because I mean, you don't just show up even to that kind of a environment with the situation you're in and train for 2 months and just go, yeah, cool, I'm ready. I mean, you've been preparing for this throughout your life, and
Yeah,
the challenges come, the unknowns come, and I've known you long enough now to kind of, the ups and downs come, and you do just kind of flow them. It's, there's a certain
yeah,
level of seriousness, and there's a certain level of like, well, shit, that happened. But the Zach I know shows up pretty quickly, on the other side of it, being like, hey, okay, and now what? Right. So, I mean, how does that, how would you describe that? Like your overall preparedness in life for this kind of stuff that just could trip people up and you're done. Like I said, I mean, I might just be somebody who just walks away from this going, screw these guys. They don't get it. They're never going to get it. I'm done.
yeah. Well, at the end of the day, I do enjoy, like at the very base of this, me and my buddy David started in Switzerland and ended in France. And we went up and over this thing, and we would have done that if there was no people, no race, no nothing. So I truly enjoy doing what I'm doing. So that makes it easy. The race thing is just kind of this extra noise in the background that just happens to be there. Um, but like last year when I got kicked off the course, I felt how massive this race was and like how almost out of reach the goal was. But I think that's what's enticing is like, how can I get closer to this? And just kind of breaking it down piece by piece. You don't have to do it overnight. You don't do it in one step, you do it in small steps, which is what the race is a bunch of small steps that end up taking you across the finish line. And just looking at it like that, not looking at it like, oh, I was out there I got to do this 12-hour thing. I got to go up within 9,000 feet. You do like one step in front of the other, one foot up in the vert after another. And I think you do that in life as well, and don't make it seem overwhelming. Even though when you look at the whole picture, you're like, oh my God, I got to run from Switzerland to France in a rainstorm, in the mud, in the snow, and these people don't want me here to begin with. Like, I didn't look at it like that at all. It was just basically being present in the moment, in the now, enjoying my company that was with me, laughing, a lot of laughter, man. We had a lot of fun that day, um, which, I think kind of makes it less serious. I mean, it is a serious thing, but it's also not.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you're running on a trail, like I said, like how serious is it? But it is and it isn't. And I love how you kind of play out that duality because I think there's a lot in that for other people in all aspects of their life. And also that, how long has it been now, or how far into this of Zach quitting his, previous life and
Almost two
committing to
years.
this mission? Yeah. So I'm thinking we're coming up on the 2 year mark, right?
Yeah,
All right. Yeah.
2 years.
And just like the twists and turns, it's all unknown. I mean, all of it.
Yeah, I
I
think
mean, by
too.
definition, right?
I look at it as an experience. Like we're just
Yeah.
having this experience, and you just kind of get out of your own way about like being serious about things. Not that doesn't mean that I don't take my training serious or my life serious. It's just I'm just kind of like loose in my body about it.
Well, and also if I understand correctly, sort of the notion of firm expectations. Like, yes, we're all trying to like there's a journey and there's a direction, but the pace and the expectations, the more that's there, the harder it is to keep, the
Yeah,
setbacks feel bigger, right?
yeah. And
Yeah,
I think I
especially
could
in
have
these
had that.
unknown environments like you have. I mean, the whole thing in the last 2 years is a plot towards, you've just been off-roading. I don't know where, I don't know what exactly, but on the other side of this thing is what I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I think in those moments, day by day, that are in between the UTMB events and whatever else we're doing, I'm enjoying this process.
Yeah,
I have fun, figuring out what's next, seeing what's next. It's just a fun way to live.
yeah, I love it, brother. That's and this is the part of like when we do talk and we do get to share what you're about, this is kind of for me the funnest part of what to share, right? Is just how you live, how you love what you do, and how also you cut yourself slack and everybody else when things don't go exactly how you might have wanted it to. It's just like, well, it's just part of the process, part of the journey.
Yeah.
I think that's what's cool and unique and novel that I've enjoyed sort of experiencing with you the past couple of years.
Thanks, man. It's been fun, you know. I feel like
Yeah,
we met right when this was like kind of popping off.
totally, totally. At the start line. So, dude, well, not really. It goes back a little further for you, but the official start line, everything else we're preparing to get there, I guess. So the rest of this year, 2024, you've got the climb coming up with Romp. Like, what's in the
Yeah.
plans?
So we're working on my schedule for next year and beyond. I'm probably going to be in Europe even longer next year, doing more European races. Probably do more UTMB events, but also I signed up for a grassroots event in my backyard. I might be doing the Mendo 50K because I really crave that like just grassroots running community where we're just out there enjoying it, where nobody's going to be breathing down my neck trying to tell me to quit. You know, so I
Yeah,
do,
Mendo folk are a little different.
yeah, I do really, I crave that. When I came back home, I just really craved that trail community that we all know, you know, that's part of the born to run and like born to adapt stuff. So I really want to lean into those when I'm in those, and then you know the pro trail stuff is the job. I mean, I'll be clocking in and clocking out at this
Yeah.
point. Still working hard. You know, me and Eric are going in even more in depth in our training. We've learned a lot about myself in the past year about how I train and what makes me more successful. You know, just like trial and error. Like, oh, this worked, this didn't work. So we've learned a lot, and now we get to apply that learning to the next phase of training, which for me, I love training like so much because there's just so much creativity that you can do. You know, you do have these like base rules that we're doing, like the zone trainings and like the recovery, but you can tweak things here and there and see what works. And it's been working. I mean, my running in the last year has been, I mean, off the chain.
I love it. I love it. So, real quick, let's speak to that physical side of like, what you've been learning about your body, how to take care of it, how to help it recover properly. What's, I mean, we haven't talked about this in a little bit. So, what have you learned this year about that? Anything to share that could be helpful for other people?
Yeah, so for me, like I don't have like I mean I have like massive training days, but not so many of them. I do them in like small increments. Sometimes to get heavy mileage, I'll do like a morning run and an afternoon run, like a maybe an hour each. Maybe one's a little bit more faster than the other. We've been doing some like straight on track sessions where I'm mainly focused on my running stride, my cadence, with some speed. And then that's like really translated really well to trails. You know, like we learned this summer, like my big days have to be spaced out. You know, I can't have like a big Saturday and big Sunday because then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm not able to do a lot. So we're just like spacing them out. Um, and you know, everybody's body is different, especially mine. Running with a blade in the mountains is a little bit, I don't know, like taxing on my joints. I mean, I did use my Go sleeves a lot, actually. I left my knee sleeves at home, and Megan actually brought them to me, like whenever we met up. So those were like crucial for like the after. I didn't go anywhere without my knee brace probably for like 3 or 4 days after my race because it was just a big, huge effort all in one day, like the biggest effort I've ever done in my life. My Strava said I ran 35 miles with 9,000 feet of vert.
Wow,
And yeah,
that's
so
insane.
it was really nice to have the tools for after, you know, and
Yeah.
just focus in on what recovery looks like for me. It's just being like kind to my body and listening to it and not having anything on the map. Like I haven't had structured training. It's almost been 3 weeks since my race. We haven't had anything structured. It's basically run if you feel like it. And I felt like it 2 or 3 times. So that's to let the mind also relax because you don't want to burn out. We got a
Yeah.
long runway ahead of us, and there's no rush to like get into the next thing.
Well, and you were grinding. I mean, it was a little bit of a compressed time period because of getting out of Chicago with the new prosthetic and all of that. So, I mean,
Yeah,
it was a big
honestly,
push, but man,
I was
what
looking in
a,
a tunnel. I was like, I couldn't
yeah,
see
yeah, yeah,
anything else except for race day, which
yeah.
was a first for
But
me.
dude, you guys nailed it. You and Eric. I mean, it's really impressive. I mean, seriously, you guys got it done. 'Cause I was, for me, I was a little concerned. I'm like, man, the training time's getting shorter and shorter, but
Yeah,
you
man,
got
I
it
trust that
done.
guy. He
Yeah, it's
had me
awesome.
firing
Amazing.
on all cylinders and feeling good. Even in the race, I was like, damn, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I mean, it just speaks to the structure. You stuck to it. There's a lot of trust there. That's really important.
We
Um,
communicate too. That's another thing is we communicate every day after a training session, and I tell them how my body feels, how my mind feels. I mean, there was a lot of days we changed things in my training when I was living in Chamonix. And not thinking I have to get everything in that he has. We can alter it around because you're trying to make your body feel good, not hurt it. And I think that was huge. Not getting hurt is like, holy smokes, you know?
yeah, yeah. Not getting hurt turns out to be pretty important.
And it's easy to do in those mountains. I mean, because they're right
Yeah,
there, right in your face, trails every day, boom, and you got people inviting you to go do this and go do that. So you got to be careful and listen to your body. I think that's the most important thing I learned in the last year is just because it's on the calendar to do, we can move it around. Like, listen to the
yeah.
body. How's the body responding to the previous day's training?
I love that, man. I was just running down a trail, taking a little video, saying exactly that. Like I'm coming off an Achilles sprain. Why? Because I didn't listen to my body. It's starting to get tight. I like earlier in the summer, I was like, yeah, let's get back on the trails, get some vertical going, and my calf and my Achilles are getting tighter and tighter and tighter. I was like, the old Darren kicked in. Just rub dirt on it, you'll be fine. And then basketball one day, and there it is. You're like, you idiot. And yeah, it sounds so stupid and so easy, this idea of listening to your body, but it's more than listen. It's actually like, dude, check down. You don't need to push so hard every day. Yeah, the
Yeah,
victory is being able to run or bike or hike or whatever it is that you're trying to do every day. That's the victory, to be able to do it and not have the
yeah.
downtime.
I did. One of the things that I get feedback from Eric a lot is I sometimes go too hard in my workouts. And that's probably the most common thing. He's like, oh, today's workout, you went a little too hard, man. And I'm
Yeah,
like, really? So it's interesting.
yeah, I see that. Yeah, I just think that's, if you have a competitive mindset, that's kind of how we're wired, right? So that's the challenge with so many of us. If we have that competitive mindset, and just being able to listen and not just listen like, wow, that's going on, but do something about it. Check down, give yourself a little bit of grace.
Well,
You
here's
know,
something competitive to be competitive with consistency. And if you get hurt, you're
mm,
not consistent. So then you're not doing what you need to do to be successful.
love it.
Consistency is the biggest thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right on, brother. Well, hey, thank you, Go Sleeves athlete Zachary Friedley. Huge accomplishment, brother. Thank you for sharing it. And as always, like, thanks for sharing you and sort of all the. I just think there's so much to be learned about, kind of your mindset and how you live. So I'm always happy to just get that story out as much as we can because um, I don't know, our community, there's, in every community, but there's a lot to be learned. That's the reason I love connecting with you and trying to get some of that mindset out and sharing it. So I
Well, it's
appreciate you, man.
my pleasure to be on here and sharing all the things that I learned.
Right on, brother. Thank you.